They walk among us like warriors cloaked in light, those we call the chosen ones. Gifted, driven, divinely aligned. Yet behind their unwavering eyes and seemingly unshakable conviction lies a secret storm they rarely speak of. It's not doubt, it's not fear. It's lust, a burning, persistent force that shadows their greatness. And the truth is both haunting and human. The brighter the flame, the darker the temptation. Why would someone so spiritually aware, so connected to a higher calling, struggle with something so primal? The answer lies deep within the paradox of purpose. The chosen are forged in fire, but even they can burn, while the world marvels at their talents. Few realize the weight of their inner battle. Lust doesn't just attack the weak, it hunts the powerful. Not because they're vulnerable in the conventional sense, but because their energy, their potential, their calling, these are magnetic to darkness. And in that magnetic field, lust becomes a seductive distraction, a detour dressed as desire. For the chosen, lust is rarely about pleasure. It's about escape. Escape from the pressure of perfection, from the loneliness of leadership, from the burden of always having to rise above. The chosen often grow up feeling different, isolated, misunderstood. That feeling doesn't vanish as they mature, it intensifies. While others seek connection in casual ways, the chosen seek depth. But life doesn't always offer that depth, especially not in relationships. So they compromise. They seek intimacy where it can be quickly found, even if it's only skin deep. Lust becomes a counterfeit connection, a substitute for the soul-deep bond they crave but rarely experience. And yet, they hate themselves for it. Not just because they fall into it, but because they know better. They teach purity, they preach discipline, they model spiritual clarity, and still, in the privacy of their minds or the shadows of their rooms, they wrestle with urges that don't match the message. This dissonance tears at them. It's not just a moral failure. It feels like a betrayal of their very identity. That shame doesn't lead to healing. It leads to secrecy. And the more they hide it, the more power it gains. Here's where the paradox sharpens its edge. The more spiritual a person becomes, the more their soul expands, and the more intense their emotional and physical responses become. Lust isn't simply about bodies. For the chosen, it's tied to creativity, vision, passion. Their capacity for love, when unguarded, bleeds into desire. What was meant to fuel sacred connection now tempts them toward fleeting moments of false intimacy. The same fire that drives them to create, to lead, to heal, is the fire that can seduce them. Lust often disguises itself as inspiration. The chosen will meet someone and feel an intense spark, not realizing it's not necessarily divine alignment, but an old hunger in a new form. And because they're intuitive, they read energy deeply. They can sense someone's wounds, longings, intentions, and sometimes mistake that emotional knowing for spiritual compatibility. But not all connections are meant to be explored. Some are meant to be resisted. And when the chosen forget this, they often fall for people who mirror their pain, not their purpose. There's also the loneliness factor. The chosen often lead others, but are rarely led themselves. They're the ones people run to, depend on, seek wisdom from. But who pours into them? Who sees them not as a role, but as a person? This emptiness becomes a breeding ground for lust. Because when the soul starves, the body compensates. When emotional connection feels unreachable, physical gratification becomes a tempting replacement. Even just the thought of being wanted, desired, seen, not for the calling, but for the person, can be intoxicating. It's not always about sex. Sometimes it's about significance. Moreover, many chosen ones have traumatic pasts, wounds. They've buried deep beneath their calling. Childhood neglect, emotional abandonment, sexual confusion, or violation. These unresolved wounds don't disappear with purpose. They lurk in the subconscious, triggering urges that are more about healing than pleasure. But if healing never happens, the pattern becomes cyclical. Lust becomes the medicine that poisons slowly. It gives a moment of relief, followed by a wave of guilt. Again and again. It's important to understand that the chosen aren't hypocrites. They're human, but their standards are so high, and their platforms so visible, that any slip feels catastrophic. So instead of reaching for help, they retreat into silence. And that silence, over time, becomes a breeding ground for shame. Shame morphs into secrecy, secrecy into addiction, and addiction into identity distortion. They forget who they were before the struggle. They begin to believe the lie that this secret is stronger than their destiny. But here's the quiet truth few speak. Struggling with lust doesn't disqualify the chosen. It reminds them of their need for grace. The battle itself, though painful, keeps them grounded. It humbles them. It softens their judgment toward others. And in some divine way, it draws them closer to the very source of their strength. Because when you can't fight something alone, you are forced to surrender. And surrender is where transformation begins. The chosen are not called to perfection. They are called to growth, to honesty, to healing. Lust loses its power not when it is ignored or punished, but when it is exposed and understood. When its roots are traced, not just in the flesh, but in the wounds of the soul. The more the chosen understand their triggers, their trauma, their inner voids, the more equipped they become to resist not just lust, but the illusion it carries. The world needs the chosen, but it doesn't need their masks. It needs their vulnerability, their truth, their journey, not just the highlights. When they speak openly, they unlock freedom for others. When they confess the war, they become more than leaders. They become liberators. Because if the chosen can admit their struggle, it gives permission for the rest of us to stop pretending to. So no, the struggle with lust isn't proof of failure. It's proof of fire. And fire, when refined, purifies. The chosen are not disqualified by their desires. They are defined by what they do with them. Will they run, hide, numb it, or will they face it, own it, and transform through it? The journey is not about suppression, but redemption. The goal is not just self-control, but self-awareness. The gift is not immunity from temptation. It's the wisdom to navigate it without losing your soul. The chosen are not immune to lust because they are spiritual. They struggle with lust because they are deeply alive. Every pulse of desire is a reminder of their capacity to feel, to love, to long for something more. In the end, the true power of the chosen is not in their ability to be untouched by darkness, but in their ability to carry the light even while fighting their shadows. They were never meant to be perfect. They were meant to be real. And in that realness, there is more power than any fantasy lust could ever offer.